Hear those birds? They love tomatoes. They love my big, ripe, juicy red and golden yellow and orange tomatoes. I spent a lot of time trying to keep them out of my tomatoes, and they spend more time getting in. They're not dumb. They will find any little place they can, and they will tear through this animal netting. This is not bird netting, it's animal netting, so it's not as heavy as bird netting. But even though I stack up the debris, they will find a place and actually, just as you can see, make holes big enough to get in to the tomatoes. Whether it's at a corner, it's like here, or if it's in the center of the wood, they will find their way in and get to my tomatoes. You can see little pieces of tomato in there on the ground where they've gone in and eaten it. They don't eat the green ones, but they sure love the ripe ones. I'm trying different things, and someone suggested hanging CDs will work. She's done it in her garden, and I'm willing to try it in my garden. So let's go on an adventure. I've decided to sacrifice possibly some tomatoes for this experiment to find out if hanging CDs actually works in my garden. As I've studied this method, a couple things have come forward, and that is, one, that you need to move these CDs occasionally from place to place around the garden so that the birds don't get used to them. And another thing that I've learned is that these CDs need to be close to the fruit. It can't be 3 feet away, but it needs to be pretty close to the fruit so that it causes motion and keeps the birds away. Something else I'm trying here is I'm using 2 CDs. So actually the top of the CDs are actually facing each other inside. And so on both sides I have shiny CDs. As you can see, the birds were in here last night having dinner. I've got some ripening tomatoes right here, and I've hung a CD right by it. I'm not opposed to the birds eating tomatoes, but I just don't want them eating the ripe tomatoes that I want to bring in the house. Sometimes you have tomatoes that go rotten or do get pecked, and so those tomatoes we actually do set out away from the garden in this pile right here and allow the birds to eat the tomatoes. I have watched and filmed them over here eating the tomatoes. Our hope was that we would put the tomatoes away from the garden, and then that would draw them away from the garden. That has not been the case. Just like us, they want vine-ripe tomatoes, and they'll eat these because they're readily available, but they'll come after the other tomatoes too. If you look at a tomato and you say it needs one more day, then it's going to be perfect, that's the day that you need to take it inside the house, because the next day when you come out, the birds will have eaten it. Done it too many times to know. There you have it. Add a little bling to your garden and see if that scares away the birds. Here, the birds that bother our garden are mockingbirds. I will come back in a week or so and let you know if it did deter the birds. I've got these set up so I know exactly which tomatoes are ripening, and I can watch closely to see if they attack those tomatoes. You see the bird? It's right by the CD there, and it's picking on the tomato. Look at that. There it is, right there. Not getting bothered at all. I would say that the CD is not helping, unfortunately. There it is. So in my experience here, look at him just tear into that. Wow. Kind of cool actually to get this on film. So, do CDs work? Not in this case. She is going to town. Look, didn't even finish it, and she's off to another one. So I showed the footage of the bird pecking on the tomatoes to my friend who had suggested that hanging CDs will take care of the problem, and she said that I had the CDs hanging incorrectly and I needed just to have a single CD hanging on a string. So I re-tied my CDs yesterday, and as you can see this morning the birds were out and having breakfast on the tomatoes with this CD hanging directly in front of the tomato and CD hanging back there. I repositioned these yesterday so they're a new location. So as far as I can tell, CDs for my garden do not work when there's semi-ripe fruit on the plants. As you can see, this tomato is not completely ripe at all, but they just went to town and just took that tomato out. That is definitely bird pecking, as you can tell, way up off the ground. So, on to looking at some other alternatives to keeping birds out of my tomato garden. This is LDS Prepper reminding you, if you are prepared, you shall not fear. And if you have a solution that's worked 100% for you, or pretty close to 100%, that's kept the birds out of your tomatoes, please comment below.